CNN 10, I'm Carl Azus. Thank you for watching today. Last year, the United Nations found that 1% of the aid that it was sending to the nation of Yemen had gone missing. But a CNN undercover investigation indicates the problem could be far bigger. Since 2004, a militant group called the Houthis has been fighting the Yemeni government. The Middle Eastern country's civil war heated up in 2015, and the UN says at least 7,000 civilians have been killed since then, with thousands more injured, though estimates from other international groups say the actual death toll is many times that. Because of war, disease, and widespread poverty, aid workers say 80% of Yemenis are in need of help and protection. The UN considers Yemen to be the site of the world's largest humanitarian crisis. But even as civilians suffer, there appears to be no end in sight for the fighting. The Houthi rebels are part of a Shiite Muslim minority in a country that's mostly Sunni Muslim. That's significant because this war goes beyond Yemen's borders. The nation of Iran, whose population is mostly Shiite Muslim, is supporting the Houthi rebels who are fighting Yemen's government. The nation of Saudi Arabia, whose population is mostly Sunni Muslim, supports Yemen's government. Saudi Arabia has led a coalition of several countries in a military campaign against the Houthis. Now, there are signs that in Yemen, where millions of people are starving, food may have become a weapon.
This is warrior country, an ancient land that seems designed for conflict, and now Yemen is being torn apart again. The UN says it's one step away from famine because of war. But on a 4,000-kilometer journey through the worst-hit areas, we found innocent people brought close to death by a rebel Houthi government that's manipulating aid, while UN officials try to stop them. We found evidence of this throughout northern Yemen, first in Bani Qais, 5 hours' drive from the capital. How are you surviving for food? How do you get food?
My husband goes to work. He gets 500 or 1,000 riyals, and he buys food for us and goes home. But there is no money for clothes, diapers for the children, or medicine.
Why do you think you're not getting aid here? Why are people not getting help?
They don't reach us here. They used to give us grains and flour, but then they refuse to give it to anyone. They don't give us anything.
Already dirt poor, people here relied on UN handouts. But they stopped when the World Food Programme discovered that supplies were going missing. So in this village there's some malnutrition and people are saying that they're not getting any aid. Why is that?
They used to give parents a bag of grains, oil, and other stuff every month. This stopped 2 months ago. We don't know why. There are people higher up who know why.
It's a problem that's been raised at the highest levels.
We've certainly, in several situations, had to say to local authorities, you don't let us in there, we can't continue these programs. And that's why we've been forced into situations where we've said, if you don't let us in, if you don't let us do our jobs properly, then we're not going to be able to continue.
This is Aslam. The UN has been denied access to this area and has stopped food distributions because they cannot be monitored. It's only a few miles from the front line. 10,000 people have poured into camps like this in a few weeks. They're victims of a war being waged by a Saudi-led coalition armed by the US and others against the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. Assalamu alaikum.
What we have, we scrounge from others. And when we get our rations from the World Food Programme, I give back people what I owe. But we haven't had anything from the World Food Programme for 2 months. We have nothing now.
So again, vulnerable people are being denied aid by the UN because the Houthi government won't allow access and independent monitoring. In the Yemen now, nearly everyone is short of food.
Malnutrition isn't only a problem among the displaced and the host community. We have it too. Even us, the employees, our children back home are malnourished.
The Houthis are under siege. Their access to the outside world cut by coalition attacks on this, the main port of Hodeidah. Since the Saudi-led coalition imposed a blockade on this port and attacked it from the air, It's done about $800 million worth of damage. It's halved the amount of food and other materials coming into the port, and it's destroyed about 60% of its capacity. The idea, of course, is to try to strangle the capacity of the Houthi regime to survive. The irony, of course, is from the Houthi perspective, a control over a limited amount of supply, particularly when it comes to food, means you have control over everything.
The Houthis have now relinquished control over the port, but their control over aid distribution remains absolute.
In the capital, Sana'a, the Houthi government denies this.
Essentially, they're saying that you're very controlling and that you're using this to win friends politically around the country, using foreign aid to win friends, to win political influence.
What you said can be described as inaccurate. Mistakes happen sometimes, but that doesn't mean or doesn't represent a policy on our side. We are happy with whatever aid reaches citizens, because these citizens are our strength and support. They are our capital in this war.
But here, aid officials insist that food has been weaponized. Without free food from the outside world, the Houthi government would struggle to survive. The UN plans to feed 12 million this year, mostly in the Houthi areas.
Are you not worried that by being here you could be prolonging the war?
Certainly humanitarians are not political. We're here to keep people alive. The responsibility for ending the conflict is in the hands of the people who are driving that conflict.
10-second trivia. Unmixable ingredients like oil and water can be blended and held together by what? Hydrogenation, emulsifiers, lactose, or pasteurization? Emulsifiers help keep food mixes together when and after they're processed. Emulsifiers are common in ultra-processed foods, and a new study in the journal Cell Metabolism says those kinds of foods can cause people to gain more weight than unprocessed foods. Ultra-processed refers to foods that have emulsifiers, high fructose corn syrup, flavoring agents, and hydrogenated oils. In the study, 10 healthy adults ate an ultra-processed diet for 14 days. It included foods like baked potato chips, turkey bacon, and bagels with cream cheese. 10 others ate an unprocessed diet, including oatmeal, bananas, meats, and walnuts. Then the two groups switched diets for another 14 days. The meals all had the same amount of calories, fat, and carbohydrates, but participants were allowed to eat as much or as little as they wanted. They also exercised about the same amount each day. The results? On the ultra-processed diet, people ate faster and took more helpings, consuming about 500 more calories per day than those on the unprocessed diet. With the ultra-processed foods, they tended to gain about 2 pounds. With the unprocessed foods, they tended to lose about 2 pounds. So one big conclusion was that limiting the ultra-processed foods we eat can help prevent obesity. But that's not always easy. Researchers say it takes less time to prepare the ultra-processed foods, and they cost less. A week of processed meals was estimated to be around $106. A week of more natural meals, $151. That may be why another study found that a majority of the foods that Americans, Britons, and Canadians eat is ultra-processed. This is the kind of giant bear you wouldn't mind stumbling on, but honestly, what would you do with it? It's not going to fit in your room, it may not fit in your house. The new Guinness World Record holder for biggest teddy bear is more than 65 feet long, it weighs more than 4 tons, it took more than 3 months to sew together, and more than 5 hours just to measure. It's meant to attract tourists to a town near Mexico City. And while a lot of people all can share it and others travel there just to stare, it's not going to fit hardly anywhere. It just sits there as few rooms could bear it. Want one? Well, your home whereabouts better be a gigantic bear housing warehouse. Santa can't bring it. You'll need a quote from a shipping group that needs a bigger boat. If it stays afloat and seas ain't too heavy, you might just see your record-setting teddy. I'm Carl Azuz, stitching up another edition of CNN.